So here's a scenario that probably sounds painfully familiar. Like you sketch something and for once it actually looks like really good. The pose, the energy, the proportions, like you nailed it. So you make a new layer, lower your sketch opacity as you do, and start cleaning it up with proper line art. And then when you delete the sketch layer at the end,
4 to 6 weeks later,
you know, to admire your masterpiece. Oh no, it looks way worse. Still lifeless, like the energy is just gone. And if this happened to you, well, congratulations. You're a normal artist. Like it happens to all of us, right? And there's actually a really specific reason for it, and almost nobody talks about this. So let's break down why it happens and how to fix it so that your next line art will actually be better than the sketch. Let's get into it. All right, your brain is doing something kind of sneaky when you look at a messy sketch. It's basically filling the gaps for you. And there's a name for this in psychology, and it's called the Gestalt principles. And basically, our brains are wired to perceive like complete forms when we're only seeing partial information. So when you look at your messy sketch with all of those like overlapping lines, rough lines, well, you're not actually seeing each individual stroke. Your brain kind of just averages them out and it's showing you the form that's underneath. So that's why like a messy sketch can look pretty amazing, even when technically none of the lines are correct. But the second you start working on your clean line art, all of that magic disappears. Now you have to commit to one specific line for every shape. And if you didn't fully understand the form underneath all of that mess, well, maybe now you have to guess. And usually you'll guess wrong. So your line will look worse because you basically just expose kind of like every gap in your understanding all at once. So how do we fix that? You've got really two main options. The first one is just to sketch cleaner, like doing more of the problem solving in the sketch phase. So that way the line art step is mostly just tracing over a solid drawing. That's what I do most of the time. But there's also a second option that I also do, which is to just skip the line art entirely. You know, like you just clean up your sketch basically as best as you can, or like just paint over it. So basically by the end of the painting, there's no sketch left visible, right? So like a lot of artists do this. I do this a lot. That's exactly what I did in last week's video, for example. So if line art frustrates you, well, you have full permission to skip it. Not that you needed permission, but you know, every drawing doesn't need a clean line art. But if you do want to do line art, well, you've got to fix the technical side because that's where most artists are getting wrecked. So most beginners will draw with their wrist, with the side of their hand resting on the tablet, you know, kind of like this. And that's great for small details, but for longer brush strokes, your wrist just doesn't have the range. So you'll have to do these like segments of lines, which just ends up looking like these, you know, chicken scratch lines. Doesn't look very good, screams beginner. So for longer strokes, what you want to do is to actually lift the weight of your hands and use your whole arm, including the shoulder and elbow. And it's just physics. The more joints you involve, well, the smoother the stroke. And I know what you must be thinking, you know, like, well, this seems very tiring, but it really isn't. Like you're only engaging your entire arm in the motion when you're tracing one of those longer strokes, you know, which is a minority of the time because most of the time you're just resting. And the other thing that's really important to mention is your line confidence. And this one is mostly mental. A lot of artists will draw these really slow, hesitant lines because they're afraid of messing up, right? And that hesitation, well, it just shows up in the stroke. Like you get these wobbly lines, uncertain lines, just these lines that look weak even though they're technically in the right place. Confident lines come from committing to the stroke. Just one shot, boom! You draw the whole line in one motion. And if you mess up, no problem, just redo it. Control Z and try again. Like don't slow down halfway to kind of fix the angle. You just gotta commit. And like I said, worst case, you just redo it. You know, we have Control Z until you get the perfect line, and that's how you do it. It's completely normal for me to redo the same line like 10 times over before it feels good, before it feels just right. And with digital art, well, we can easily do that. So take advantage of your tools. And the last thing now is to just pick a brush that you like and stick with it. Like every brush has a learning curve. I've been using basically the same custom LINEART brush for years. It's part of my free brush pack. And the link is in the video description if you want to, give it a shot. Basically the one I use for all of my videos. All right, here we go from decent LINEART to actually impressive LINEART. And this is the part that most artists will never really learn properly, line weight. But I got you. So it's the difference between like taking the same drawing with uniform line width versus varied line weight. One of them will just read way better. Line weight is what gives your art depth, hierarchy, and personality. It's basically punctuation for your drawing. So there's actually 4 rules to keep in mind. Rule 1, important lines are thick. Unimportant lines are thin. Like silhouette defining lines should be your thickest. Internal details should be lighter. Thicker lines pull more attention, so be very intentional about where you're, directing your viewer's eyes. Now, rule number 2, the lines that are closer to the viewer are thicker. Like a hand reaching towards the camera should have bolder lines than the same character's hair in the back. It's kind of the same logic as atmospheric perspective. Like distance essentially softens everything. And I wouldn't go too crazy with this effect, like it's very minimal, but it makes a huge difference. Now, rule number 3, suggest detail instead of drawing it. So make use of the Gestalt principles that we talked about at the beginning of the video. Like a real mouth doesn't actually look like a single line, right? But draw it as a simple curve and your brain will still read it as a mouth. Less is more. Like drawing every single wrinkle in a fabric or like every eyelash on an eye, it clutters the drawing. So you should pick the most important parts of the form and kind of let the viewer fill in the rest. And now, rule 4, use line thickness to suggest shadows. Basically, thicken lines on the sides facing away from your light source and then keep them thinner on the lit sides. It's one of those very small tricks that take a flat line drawing and makes them feel like 3-dimensional almost. Now, if you want to take all of this to the next level, so like cleaner lines, better line weight, learn anatomy, perspective, the whole package basically. Well, that's exactly what I cover in depth in my complete art education program, Art School for Digital Artists. It's the sponsor of this video. We actually just flew past 32,000 art school students and I'm running a big sale to mark the milestone. And the program won't be this cheap again until the holidays, so now's the time. You get 10 terms of structured progression, a week-by-week study guide so you always know what you should be working on next, and exactly when you should be moving on from one term to the next. And you also get access to our private Discord. There's no subscription nonsense, it's a one-time purchase and then it's yours forever. So click the link in the description below for all the details, like if you've been wanting a structured guidance from a professional. Well, this is the lowest price that you'll see all year. Now, let's get back to it. All right, last thing, and this is honestly one that a lot of you probably need to hear. Too many of my students, and I'm suspecting too many of you, are killing your line art by being way too careful with it. And there's 2 versions of this. So the first is basically the zoom in trap. Like you're zoomed in at 400%, 1000%, fussing over every little pixel, trying to make every line mathematically perfect. Don't do that. First of all, it takes way too long to do that. And perfect lines often look like kind of sterile and boring. Some of the best line arts I've seen have this like tiny bit of wobble to it, like a little bit of personality, like a little bit of imperfection. So if you find yourself zoomed in all the time, fixing like pixel level imperfections, just don't. Zoom out. Look at the drawing at the actual scale that most people will see it. And most of the time, like these imperfections, not something that anybody would notice anyway. Now, the second version is overcorrecting your sketch. So like when you're doing the line art, like the clean lines, there's always this temptation to fix things that you see in the sketch. I would just be very careful if you do this, like keep it to the very smallest details, because the creative process should be behind you at this point. Like working on line art is basically just a technical step. So instead of any last minute tweaks, just spend more time on your initial sketch so that there's really nothing to fix in the line art, because often these corrections will just end up making things worse. So to recap, sketch cleaner or just skip the line art entirely. Use your shoulder for long strokes and commit to your lines confidently. Also, of course, vary your line weight intentionally and don't obsess over pixel perfect cleanliness. Just trust the energy of your sketch. If you do those things, it's almost certain that you'll stop ruining your sketches when you move on to the line art and actually start making line arts that look better than the sketch. Isn't that what we all want? And actually, if you want to level up the foundation under like all of this, like learning proper construction so that your sketches have something solid underneath, well, you should watch my video on the 4 levels of drawing poses next. It pairs perfectly well with everything that we covered. It's gonna appear right here on screen. I'll see you there, right? Click the link, bro.